My cat, Midnight, is about 12 years old. She is, and has always been, one of the sweetest cats I own. Like curls up on my chest under the blankets, licks my cheek, and purrs herself to sleep. I've had her for almost 10 years, and she is my baby. She's very nervous around others because, before coming to me, her previous owner abused her and tried to drown her in a river. So she'll usually hide under a bed or a couch when my boyfriend and I have company. She may come out if our friends are quieter or if we're not moving around much. A friend of ours came by today with her son, about 7 years old. He knows we have cats. Our other cat, Rocky, is a ham. He's a huge fluffy cat that loves people. He will approach anyone and flop across you as long as you pet him. So when her son asked where the cats were, we directed him to Rocky, but he said he wanted to see Midnight. I explained that she's shy, so she's hiding. Shortly after, I watched her come barreling out of the bedroom and into the corner of the kitchen. So I scooped her up, and she was shaking. My friend's son ran out after her, laughing. I told him again that she's shy, and now she's scared. I warned him that, if she gets scared, she is a very small cat, she might scratch him to protect herself, and that he should leave her alone. I put her back in my room and shut the door. I told my friend what I had told him, and she took him into the backyard with my BF so he could start grilling up lunch. At some point, her kid came back inside while I was cooking and went into my room. He ended up cornering Midnight, and in self-defense, she scratched him. And since he had his face near her, she got him good down the side of his face. He started screaming and crying and told his mom that my cat attacked him. My friend was furious because her son was so badly hurt. I will admit, it did look painful. I think he pulled away while she was scratching and her claws got caught in his skin. She said that if I didn't get my vicious cat put down or declawed, she was going to sue us for her kids' medical bills and medicine, etc. I didn't even pretend to consider either option. Declawing is cruel, and I'm not putting down my baby for protecting herself after I warned him and separated her. But my neighbors, who heard the commotion and came over to check on everyone, insisted that, no matter how sweet my cat was before, she seriously injured a child and that something needs to be done. Am I the idiot for refusing to declaw or put down my cat? Not the idiot. It's the kid's own damn fault for cornering her after you repeatedly told me not to. You did everything you could besides literally kicking the kid and parents out of your house. Any cornered animal will attack, especially one who had previously been abused. Good on you for rescuing Midnight BTW. Maybe help pay any medical bills if possible just so they don't call animal control, but I really think it's the kid's fault. It would be different if you hadn't already told them and locked Midnight away separate for the inherent reason that she is shy. Not the idiot. You warned the kid, and 7 is enough to know don't touch, leave it alone, stay out. You removed the cat after the first case of harassment and they went after it again. Where were their parents and why didn't they stop this? This is their negligence and refusal to teach the child better. They let this kid run up to dogs in closed-off areas, dogs that want to be left alone, and the owner made a point to remove him from them, do it after being told no. They need to parent. Not the idiot. When I was a little kid, I was warned not to touch a dog by my dad because the owner warned him that it would bite me. I did it anyway. It bit me in the face, I had to get stitches, and I still have a scar. My dad said to me, when I had a face full of stitches, well, bet you learned something. That dog lived for years afterward, and I learned the word no was very important when handling animals. The mother should use this as a teachable moment for her son. If not, she's making a monster that ignores boundaries and doesn't care about consent. For context, I am now 18 years old. I tried to keep it simple, but sorry if it's confusing. My parents separated when I was 3 and they have always been on good terms, so they shared custody. My mom remarried 2 years after the separation, and so I have grown up with my mom, my dad, and a stepdad. This isn't a cliché stepdad is the bad guy thing, we've always gotten along, and I have always seen it as a bonus to have an extra parent. I have always loved and respected him, and have always told him that. It took a while, but when I was 10 I started calling him dad, which is also the same term I use for my bio dad. It took me a while, because I wanted to make sure my bio dad was comfortable, and also my stepdad. Last year, my dad also remarried to a woman we'll call Shona. They'd only been dating for 7 months, but Shona had been a friend of my dad's for years, so they knew each other pretty well. She was my Aunt Shona for ages. As with my stepdad, Shona and I have always gotten on. We do clash a little sometimes, but that's more because we're both quite similar in terms of personality. Yesterday night, while cooking together, Shona turned to me and asked why I didn't call her mom. I responded just by saying because you're not my mom. I admit I could have worded it better, but Shona got really upset. She started saying how for years she has been like a mother to me, which I admit is somewhat true because she was always in close proximity, like a guardian would be, but again, I just viewed her like an aunt. She then brought up how I called my stepdad dad, so what was the difference? I tried telling her that it took me years to start addressing my stepdad in that way, but she cut me off by saying she and I have already known each other for years, so that was irrelevant. I want to make it clear at no point was she shouting or being rude, she was just genuinely upset. She then asked me if I would ever call her mom, and I said I didn't know. My dad came home a little later, and he came into my room to tell me that Shona was upset because I'd said that I don't know if I would ever view her as my mom. And I said, A, that's not what I said, and B, at the end of the day, she isn't my mom, she's my stepmom. He, like Shona, brought up my stepdad and how I viewed him like a dad and how it was unfair, I wasn't giving Shona the same chance. He also said it was quite petty and all I had to do was tell her I'd try calling her mom. Now, this morning my mom came to pick me up and I left without saying goodbye to Shona, she wouldn't come out of her room. I feel really bad about it now, but I'm also really confused about whether or not I was really the idiot in the situation. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your stepdad earned the fact that you call him dad over several years of being close to you in your childhood. Your stepmom has only been in your life for a couple years while you were a teenager and so hasn't ever been a parental figure in your life, she's demanding a title she hasn't earned. You're an adult now, and trying to get you to call her mom is a little bit weird. It's up to you if this is a hill you want to die on, it might be easier just to cave, but you are well within your rights to not call her mom. No honey, you are not an idiot. You have a mother. You are not obligated to call your stepmother mom. You explained very well that although you have known Shonda for a long time, she is not your mother. You do not have to call her mom. You don't even have to try to call her mom. I would explain everything to your actual mom, and even though you are 18 I would ask her to talk to your father. Not calling Shonda mom is not disrespectful. Her demanding it, however, is disrespectful. Not the idiot. Not the idiot, it was fine for her to ask, but she should have respected your decision or reasoning. It's not okay for her or your dad to attempt to force you to call her something you're not comfortable with. The time you've known her is not relevant. She's always been in an aunt position to you. You started living with your stepdad when you were much younger, and it took years to consider giving him that title. If it's brought up again, you have every right to let her know the conversation is actually making you really uncomfortable. I worked as a lifeguard at a small neighborhood pool for several years. Our pool had a policy about parties that basically said management needed to be notified in advance so they could schedule an extra lifeguard or two and approve extra party pay. Our pool closed at 8 p.m. and was technically membership only, but we wouldn't normally kick anybody out unless they were breaking pool rules. So one day I'm working a closing shift with one other junior guard, and a group of parents and kids shows up around 6:45 p.m. to start setting up a party. I didn't recognize any of the families, which was odd, but no big deal. I was a little miffed though, because we hadn't received any word about this party, and were technically both understaffed and underpaid for this event. But there weren't that many people, so it wasn't a big safety risk to only have 2 guards. So we just kept doing our jobs and kept an eye on the kids, pretty much all little girls around the ages of 12 to 14. Our policy was to announce reminders that the pool was closing every 15 minutes starting around 7:15. By 7:45, seeing that the partygoers were the only ones still at the pool and that they hadn't made any effort to start cleaning up, the other guard and I started exchanging displeased looks with each other. Well, 8 p.m. rolled around, we announced that the pool was closed, and the party people continued to ignore us. By 8:45 I had had enough of waiting for them. So I made one last announcement that the pool was closed, went into the guard shack, and just turned off the pool lights. One of the mothers was livid. The sun had set, and it was dark. Not total darkness, I only turned off the large overhead lights, there was still plenty of light coming from the pool lights and the street lights around us. But that didn't matter to the absolute Karen who stormed her way over to us. She started yelling, mostly repeating stuff like "you never turn the lights off on guests." This pissed me off because at this point I was about 90% sure none of them were actually members, but having no way to confirm that, I just explained to her the pool rules and that we needed to lock up as calmly as I could. After a few minutes, the junior guard stepped in and started arguing with her. I let her go for about a minute or two before I said something to the effect of "let it go, it isn't worth it," to which the Karen self-righteously replied, "That's right, it's not." I turned the lights back on and we basically just glared at the group as they awkwardly began to clean up their party. I was somewhat vindicated by the fact that none of the other parents looked us in the eye as they made their way out, and I remember relishing the sound of the gate closing as I locked it right behind the final parent who left the pool. Still, I felt bad for the little girls whose party it was. We issued plenty of reminders and warnings, but I wonder if I should have handled it differently. Not the idiot. Also, 12 to 14 is way enough of an age to know pool rules. It's not even a little girl's party, it's just an early teen party. When I was that age, wasn't too long ago, so it's not too outdated. I knew for sure how a pool works and what to do while I'm visiting even my own neighborhood pool. Don't feel bad for ruining some teen's party, she knew how it should have gone down in the first place. If anything, you probably have her a funny story on what happened that one time we were at the pool. This reminds me of when I was a lifeguard, working multiple jobs to pay for my college expenses. One afternoon there was a birthday party for some little girls. I had an important gig after my lifeguard shift, so I showered and cleaned up and was saying my goodbyes to my coworkers when a little girl from the party walked up to me and asked if I liked cupcakes. "Yeah," I said, smiling. And then she shoved a pink cupcake into my face and it got all over my long hair. It was some hilarious prank to her and all her friends and all the moms. It made me late to my gig. Oh, and not the idiot. A different way to handle it would have been to quietly approach the mom at the beginning of the party and explain the rules. Tell her that you don't want to ruin her daughter's birthday, so you will let the party happen and ask for their help in making sure that their guests leave on time and that they clean the pool area by closing. If they agree, you just keep approaching them towards the end to remind them of the agreement. If they don't agree, you ask them to leave. Not the idiot. Because waiting 45 minutes after closing was more than generous. My husband and I have a 5-year-old boy, R, who is named after my father, who died when I was 14. His middle name, C, is after my mother-in-law's father, and he has my husband's, therefore father-in-law's, surname. My father-in-law is known exclusively by his middle name, as was his uncle who raised him, but my husband has always been called by his first name. When my son was a baby, my father-in-law started calling him by his middle name. I asked him to stop and told him how important the name was to me. Father-in-law then said that he would always be known as C to him. I told him, mostly jokingly, that if he kept calling R that, then I would change his surname to my maiden name. Everyone laughed. Since then, however, both mother-in-law and father-in-law refer to him as C, but not around me, only around my husband. R doesn't like it and has told them C is not his name. My husband has asked them to stop, but there is a pretty strained relationship there, so he's reluctant to rock the boat. In Christmas and birthday cards they only ever write to our grandson. The day the in-laws had come round for a visit, and just as they were getting up to leave, father-in-law called my son C in front of me. I said who, very loudly, but father-in-law just walked off to the car. Mother-in-law had missed it, but could see I was upset and asked what was wrong. I told her and said that I thought it was incredibly disrespectful. I did swear a few times, but then apologized and explained it was just because I was so angry. She was not impressed. She told me that I was being ridiculous and that it wasn't important. That it was to me, and that if it wasn't important to them, then they should call him by his given name. Father-in-law had then come back to see what was happening, and mother-in-law was laughing when she told him that he'd upset me. He also laughed and said story of my life before going back to the car. My husband understands how angry I am, but doesn't think the fight is worth it. He's right in that we can't change them, but my current attitude is that if they can't call him R, then they don't see him. There is very little positive interaction between them generally anyway. When we're around them they tend to ignore us and just argue with each other. I'm also not going to go into the bad side, bigoted, Brexit voting views they have discussed in front of my son in the past. Am I being ridiculous? It is just a name really, and everyone else who matters calls him R. Luckily he was playing at the end of the garden so didn't hear any of it, but he's picked up that I'm angry and keeps giving me lovely cuddles. Not the idiot at all. What the hell is the story of my life? Father-in-law is playing the victim card as if he's not being super disrespectful. Your child. Your name for him. Your in-laws sound terribly entitled and bossy. They should respect you and your wishes. This is your child. If your in-laws are disrespectful, and it sounds like they are in general, you should seriously consider whether the relationship is worth it. You could also just spend less time with them. There has to be consequences for them disrespecting your wishes. Not the idiot. Honestly, the moment your son told them he didn't like being called that and they continued should have been the end of their privileges as grandparents. At this point, it's not only about disrespecting you and the memory of your father, but now they're disrespecting your son and his wishes. Doing that to a 5-year-old is teaching him that kind of behavior is acceptable and normal. Go mama bear and put a stop to this now before they do damage. If they laugh it off then it's time for a timeout for the grandparents until they can abide by your son's wishes. Not the idiot, you can set the stage here too. I would explain to your mother-in-law probably that every time they use the name C it comes off as very disrespectful. That you lost your father and it means a lot to be able to name your son after him. Tell them every time they purposely choose to use the wrong name it insulting to you, your son, your husband, and crap, even your father's memory. At that point, if they don't stop you would be completely in the right to just not interact with them and only allow supervised visits.